After discovering her fiancé in bed with her bridesmaid, Claire sends a furious text meant for him, but a wrong number delivers it to Elijah, a stranger with his own scars. What begins as a message turns into something life-changing. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain pounded against the windows of Claire Whitman's small apartment as she stared at the engagement ring on her coffee table. The diamond caught the light from the lamp, mocking her with its sparkle. 3 days ago it had been on her finger. 3 days ago she had a future. Now all she had was a half-empty bottle of wine and the burning image of her fiancé Mark in bed with her bridesmaid. "To 6 wasted years," Claire mumbled, raising her glass in a bitter toast. At 26, she felt like her life was over before it had even begun. The wedding invitations were still in boxes by the door. 200 cream-colored cards with gold lettering announcing a ceremony that would never happen. Her mother had called 14 times today. Claire hadn't answered once. She reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Mark's name. Her thumb hovered over it, tempted to call him again, to scream or beg for an explanation. But what was there to explain? She'd seen it with her own eyes when she'd surprised him with Luanch at his apartment. "Forget dignity," Claire said to herself, pouring another glass of wine. The bottle was nearly empty now. "I deserve to say my piece." Instead of calling, she opened her messages and began to type. The words flowed out of her like water breaking through a dam. All the hurt, all the betrayal, all the love that had turned to poison in her heart. "Mark, I keep thinking about the last time we were happy. Really happy. Remember that weekend at your parents' lake house? We sat on the dock and talked about what we'd name our kids. You wanted a boy named after your grandfather. I wanted a girl with your eyes. I can't believe you threw that away for a night with Jessie. Was it just once, or have you been lying to me all along? The worst part isn't even catching you. It's realizing that I never really knew you. 6 years, Mark. 6 years of my life loving someone who could hurt me this way. I keep asking myself what I did wrong. Was I not pretty enough? Not exciting enough? Did I work too much? Too little? I've been going crazy trying to figure out where I failed, but maybe I didn't fail at all. Maybe you're just a coward who couldn't tell me you weren't happy, a liar who let me plan a wedding while you were sleeping with my friend. I hope it was worth it. I hope when you look at her you remember what you lost, because I would have given you Eve, writhing. My whole heart. My whole life. Goodbye, Mark. I won't be calling again." Claire's vision blurred with tears as she hit send. She didn't even bother to check if she'd typed the number correctly. She just needed the words out of her body, like pulling out a splinter. She curled up on the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest, and cried until she fell into a restless sleep. The buzzing of her phone woke her hours later. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the screen. Claire's head pounded, and her mouth felt like cotton. She fumbled for the phone, expecting to see Mark's name. It wasn't Mark. Unknown. Number. I don't know who Mark is, but he sounds like a man who never deserved you in the first place. And for what it's worth, from one stranger to another, you didn't fail at anything. Some people just aren't brave enough to love someone properly. That's on them, not you. Claire sat up too quickly, making her head spin. She'd sent her message to the wrong number. Heat rushed to her face as she realized a complete stranger had just read her most raw, private thoughts. She quickly typed a response. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That message wasn't meant for you. Please just ignore it. I'm mortified." She barely had time to set the phone down before it buzzed again. Unknown. Number. No need to be embarrassed. We all have moments when we need to let it out. And honestly, what you wrote was beautiful, even in its pain. There's something brave about putting your hurt into words like that. Claire stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Who was this person? She checked the number she'd sent her original message to. It was only 1 digit off from Mark's. "Thank you for being so understanding. I was not in a good place last night." Unknown number. Pain has a way of finding us all eventually. The trick is no letting it make a home in your heart. You deserve better, not just from him, but from how you speak to yourself. Claire read the message twice, then a third time. There was something about those words that cut through the fog of her misery. She hesitated before typing again. "I don't even know who I'm talking to." Unknown number. My name is Elijah. I'm a night shift nurse who just got off work and found your message. And you are? Claire, I'm Claire. And I just made the biggest fool of myself. Elijah. Nice to meet you, Claire. And you're not a fool. You're just someone going through a hard time. There's a difference. Claire found herself smiling just a little. She walked to the kitchen and filled a glass with water, suddenly aware of how dehydrated she was. She leaned against the counter and typed again. Well, Elijah the night shift nurse, thank you for not thinking I'm crazy. I should probably let you get us home sleep. Elijah, actually I'm wide awake. Night shifts do that to you. So if you want to talk, I'm here. No pressure, though. Claire hesitated. This was strange, wasn't it? Talking to a complete stranger about her broken heart. But there was something freeing about it, too. This person didn't know her, didn't know Mark, had no reason to take sides or judge her. I don't even know where to start. Elijah, how about with something simple? What's your favorite ebook? Claire smiled again, surprised by the question. To Kill a Mockingbird. I read it every year. You? Elijah. Their eyes were watching God. My grandmother gave it to me when I was 15. Said it would teach me about life and love. She wasn't wrong. Claire curled back up on the couch, this time with water instead of wine, and felt something ease in her chest. Just a little. I've never read that one. Maybe I should. Elijah. I think you'd like it. It's about a woman finding her voice and her way in the world. Seemed fitting, given your message. For the next hour, Claire found herself trading messages with this stranger named Elijah. They talked about books and music. He told her about the old man on his floor at the hospital who recited Shakespeare to the nurses. She told him about her job as a graphic designer and how she'd been working on wedding invitations with such hope just weeks ago. Elijah. It's almost sunrise here. I should try to sleep before my next shift. But Claire. Yes? Elijah. When you wake up tomorrow, remember that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's ability to see it. That man didn't break you. He just showed you that you deserve someone who would never dream of hurting you that way. Claire felt tears spring to her eyes again, but they were different this time. Softer somehow. Thank you, Elijah. Really. Elijah. Good night, Claire. Or good morning, I guess. Good morning, Elijah. Claire set her phone down and looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were breaking through the clouds. For the first time in days, she felt like she might be able to breathe again. You did what? Sarah's voice rose an octave as she stared at Claire across the table at their favorite coffee shop. I accidentally sent a drunk emotional message to a complete stranger, Claire repeated, wrapping her hands around her mug, and then we ended up talking for hours. Sarah's eyes widened. That could have been anyone, a creep, a stalker, anyone. I know. But it wasn't. It was just a nice guy named Elijah who said exactly what I needed to hear. And you haven't heard from him since? Sarah asked, still looking concerned. Claire shook her head. That was 3 days ago. It was probably just a one-time thing. Just then phone buzzed. Claire tried to ignore the little leap her heart gave when she saw the now-saved number. Elijah. Had a patient today who reminded me of that story you told me about your grandfather's birdhouses. Made me smile during a tough shift. Hope your day is going well, Claire. That's him, isn't it? Sarah asked, watching Claire's face. Your whole expression just changed. Claire felt her cheeks warm. He's just being friendly. Mm-hmm, Sarah hummed skeptically. Just be careful, okay? You're vulnerable right now and you don't even know what this guy looks like. That's what's nice about it, Claire admitted. There's no pressure, no expectations, just words. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I just don't want to see you get hurt again. I know, but I think I needed this. Someone who doesn't look at me with pity or keep checking if I'm about to fall apart. Claire took a sip of her coffee. Besides, it's not like it's going anywhere. We're just two strangers who happen to connect at the right moment. But as she typed a response to Elijah, Claire couldn't help but wonder if that was really true. Your patience sounds sweet. My day's been better. First time I've left my apartment in a week. Small victories, right? His response came quickly. Elijah, small victories add up. Before you know it, you're winning the war. Claire smiled. For the first time since finding Mark with Jessie, she felt a flutter of something that wasn't pain. It was faint, like the first green shoot after a long winter. But it was there. Over the next few weeks, messages with Elijah became the bright spot in Claire's days. They established a rhythm. He would text during his breaks at the hospital or late at night after his shift. She would respond in between freelance design projects or during her lunch hour. They never exchanged pictures, never asked for last names, never suggested meeting. There was something pure about it, just words connecting two souls. One night, a month after that first message, Claire found herself telling Elijah things she'd never told anyone. Sometimes I wonder if I loved Mark, or just the idea of him. We got together so young. I don't think I ever really asked myself what I wanted. I just went along with what was expected. College, job, boyfriend, engagement, Elijah. We often follow the path that's laid out in front of us without questioning it. But detours can lead to the most beautiful destinations. Is that from one of your poems? Claire asked. Elijah had told her about his writing, how he scribbled in notebooks during quiet moments at the hospital. Elijah. No, but maybe it should be. You inspire me, you know. Claire hugged her knees to her chest, smiling at her phone like a teenager. You inspire me too. I've started drawing again. Not for work, just for me. I haven't done that in years. Elijah. I'd love to see your drawings someday. Claire paused, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. That felt like crossing a line they'd silently agreed not to cross. Maybe someday. For now, I like this. Just words. Elijah. Me too. There's something special about getting to know someone's mind before anything else. As Claire fell asleep that night, she realized she hadn't thought about Mark all day. Not once. Instead, her dreams were filled with a voice she'd never heard and a face she couldn't picture. Mark called on what would have been their wedding day. Claire, please, can we just talk? His voice sounded tinny and distant on her voicemail. I miss you. What I did was unforgivable. But 6 years has to count for something, right? Claire deleted the message without calling back. Instead, she texted Elijah. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. I thought I'd be a mess, but I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I feel free. Elijah. Freedom looks good on you, Claire Whitman. Claire smiled, then froze. She had never told him her last name. How do you know my last name? There was a long pause before his response came through. Elijah, you mentioned it once when you were talking about your family's Christmas traditions. Did I cross a line? Claire tried to remember if she had told him. Maybe she had. The past few weeks had been such a blur of messages and confessions. No, it's fine, I just didn't remember telling you, Elijah. I can stop using it if it makes you uncomfortable. No, it's okay. I like the way you say my name. That night, Claire found herself printing out some of their conversations. She didn't analyze why she was doing it, only that she wanted to hold their words in her hands, to have something tangible of this connection that had become so important to her. She placed the pages in her nightstand drawer and ran her fingers over them before turning out the light. As she drifted off to sleep, she realized that for the first time in a long time, she was looking forward to tomorrow. You need to meet him, Sarah insisted over lunch 2 months after Claire's first message to Elijah. This is getting weird, Claire. You talk to this guy every day, but you won't even FaceTime with him. Claire pushed her salad around her plate. It's not weird, it's just different. Different is one thing, but you're falling for a person you've never even seen. That's not true, Claire protested, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Sarah gave her a knowing look. You sleep with his messages next to your bed. You smile at your phone like it holds the secrets of the universe. If that's not falling, I don't know what is. Claire sighed. Okay, maybe I am. But what if meeting ruins it? Right now, he's this perfect voice in my life. What if reality doesn't live up to that? Or what if it's better? Sarah challenged. What if he's everything you've been writing to and more? Claire didn't have an answer for that. The truth was, she was scared. Scared that Elijah wouldn't like what he saw. scared that the magic would disappear once they stepped out of the world they'd created between their phones. That night, she stared at her phone for a long time before typing, "Do you ever wonder what I look like?" Elijah's response took longer than usual. "Elijah, I imagine your smile when you tell me about your niece's dance recitals. I picture your hands when you describe your drawings. But do I need to see you to know you?" "No, I see you in your words every day." Claire felt her heart squeeze. "But don't you want to? See me, I mean." "For real, Elijah. Only if you want me to see you. Only if you're ready." Claire took a deep breath. "I think I might be. Ready, I mean. To meet you." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. "Elijah, are you sure? Because once we cross that bridge, we can't go back to this perfect bubble we've created. I'm not sure of anything, except that I want to know if your voice sounds the way I imagine it. I want to see if your eyes crinkle when you laugh like I think they do." "Elijah, then let's do it." "When?" Claire's heart raced. This was really happening. This weekend? Saturday at the Book Nook Cafe on Main Street? Around noon? "Elijah, I'll be there." "How will I know it's you?" Claire smiled. "I'll be the one with To Kill a Mockingbird on the table." "Elijah, and I'll bring Their Eyes Were Watching God." Claire set her phone down, her hands trembling slightly. In 3 days, she would meet the man whose words had become her lifeline. The man who knew her heart better than anyone ever had. She was terrified and excited, and suddenly very, very aware that she had no idea what to wear. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Claire found herself wondering what Elijah Morgan might be like in person. She'd created an image in her mind: kind eyes, gentle hands, a smile that matched the warmth, goutage of his words. What she didn't know was that Elijah was lying awake too, staring at his ceiling, wondering if everything would change when Claire finally saw him, if the connection they'd built would survive the reality of who he was, if the world's judgments would reach the one place he'd felt safe, her heart. 3 days. Just 3 days until they would step out of the space between screens and into each other's real lives. Just 3 days until everything changed. The next 3 days passed in a blur for Claire. One moment she was confident about meeting Elijah. The next, she was ready to cancel everything. She changed her outfit a dozen times on Saturday morning, finally settling on a simple blue dress that Sarah had once said brought out the color in her eyes. "This is crazy," Claire muttered to herself as she applied a light coat of mascara. "I'm getting dressed up for a man who's never even seen me." But that was the whole point, wasn't it? Elijah had gotten to know her, really know her, without ever seeing her face. He had no idea if she was tall or short, blonde or brunette, thin or curvy. He had connected with her mind, her heart, her words, nothing else. Claire's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Good luck today. Call me the second it's over. And remember, if he's weird or creepy, the code word is pineapple, and I'll call with an emergency." Claire smiled and texted back, "Thanks. I don't think I'll need the pineapple, but I appreciate it." As she grabbed her purse and copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, another text came through. "Elijah. Nervous?" Claire let out a shaky breath. "Terrified. You?" "Same, but in a good way, like waiting for the roller coaster to start." "What if we don't recognize each other?" Claire asked, voicing one of her many fears. "I'll recognize you," Elijah replied. "Not your face, but you." Claire smiled at his message as she locked her apartment door. That was exactly what she needed to hear. The Book Nook Cafe was a 15-minute walk from Claire's apartment. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers. Claire tried to focus on the beauty around her rather than the butterflies in her stomach. Almost there, she texted as she rounded the corner onto Main Street. "Are you close?" "5 minutes away," came the reply. "Can't wait to meet you, Claire Whitman." The cafe was busy but not crowded. Claire chose a table by the window, setting her book prominently in front of her as they'd arranged. She ordered a latte from the friendly waitress and tried to calm her racing heart. "First date?" the waitress asked with a knowing smile as she set down Claire's coffee. "Something like that," Claire replied, her voice steadier than she felt. As the minutes ticked by, Claire found herself watching every person who walked past the window. What did she expect Elijah to look like? In her mind, she had created an image based on his words. Thoughtful eyes, a kind smile, strong hands that could write poetry and save lives. Her phone buzzed again. I'm outside the cafe, just taking a deep breath before I come in. Claire's heart jumped into her throat. I'm at the window table, blue dress, brown hair. She watched the door, barely breathing. A tall, lean man with dark skin stepped into the cafe, a book tucked under his arm. His eyes scanned the room before landing on Claire. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then a slow, beautiful smile spread across his face, and Claire felt something settle in her chest. A recognition that had nothing to do with his appearance and everything to do with the warmth in his eyes. Elijah walked to her table, his movements graceful and measured. He wore a simple navy button-down shirt and khaki pants, casual but neat. His face was au-pen, expressive, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw softened by the gentleness of his smile. Claire, he said, his voice deeper and richer than she'd imagined, with a musical quality to it. She nodded, suddenly unable to speak. I'm Elijah, he said, extending his hand. It's so good to finally meet you. When their hands touched, Claire felt a current run through her, a physical confirmation of the connection they'd built through words alone. Hi, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. You're real. Elijah laughed, a warm, genuine sound that immediately put her at ease. Last time I checked. May I? He asked, gesturing to the chair across from her. Please, Claire said, finding her voice again. I see you brought the book. Elijah placed their eyes were watching God on the table next to her, To Kill a Mockingbird, the two books forming a bridge between them. I promised I would, he said, his eyes never leaving her face. You know, it's strange. You look exactly like you, if that makes any sense. Claire smiled. It does, actually. You too. Like I've known your face without ever seeing it. The waitress came over, and Elijah ordered a black coffee. When she left, he leaned forward slightly. So, he said, this is weird, right? Claire laughed, relieved by his honesty. Completely weird, but good weird. The best kind, Elijah agreed, his smile reaching his eyes, making them crinkle at the corners just as Claire had imagined. The awkwardness melted away as they began to talk. It was different from texting, richer, more immediate, but the connection was the same. Claire found herself studying his face, the way his expressions matched the voice she'd created in her head for his messages, the thoughtful furrow of his brow when he considered a question, the flash of his smile when she made him laugh. You never mentioned you were a writer and a nurse, Claire said after they'd been talking for over an hour. That's a unique combination. Elijah nodded. The nursing pays the bills. The writing feeds my soul. One day, I hope they can switch places. Have you published anything? Claire asked, genuinely curious about this part of him she hadn't fully explored in their messages. A few poems in literary journals, nothing major yet, but I'm working on a collection. He hesitated, then added, some of them were inspired by our conversations. Claire felt her cheeks warm. Really, I'd love to read them sometime. I'd like that, Elijah said, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that made Claire's heart beat faster. They ordered lunch and continued talking. Claire told him about her job, her apartment, her childhood in a small town outside the city. Elijah shared stories about his grandmother, Ho raised him, his struggles through nursing school, his dreams of being a full-time writer. Can I ask you something? Claire said as they finished their meal. Why did you answer my message that night? Most people would have just ignored a random emotional text from a stranger. Elijah was quiet for a moment, considering her question. I had a rough night at work, lost a patient I'd been caring for weeks, an older woman with no family. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot, trying to pull myself together before driving home when your message came through. He looked down at his coffee cup, turning it slowly in his hands. Your words were so raw, so honest, and somehow, responding to your pain helped me process my own. Like, maybe if I could say something to ease your hurt, it would ease mine too. Claire reached across the table and placed her hand over his. I'm glad you answered. I can't imagine these past few months without your messages. Elijah turned his hand to hold hers, his palm warm against her skin. Me too. When they finally left the cafe, the afternoon sun was starting to dip lower in the sky. They stood outside, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Would you like to walk for a bit? Elijah asked. There's a nice park a few blocks from here. Claire nodded, and they set off side by side, their hands occasionally brushing against each other as they walked. At the park, they found a bench overlooking a small pond where ducks glided across the water. This is one of my favorite spots in the city, Elijah said as they sat down. I come here sometimes to write. It's beautiful, Claire agreed, watching the light dance on the water. She turned to look at him, really look at him, taking in the strong line of his profile, the thoughtful set of his mouth, the kindness in his eyes. Thank you for today, Elijah, for being exactly who I thought you were. He met her gaze and something shifted between them, a recognition of what had been building all these months through words on a screen. Claire, he said softly, can I kiss you? Her answer was to lean forward, closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Then Elijah's hand came up to cup her cheek, and Claire felt herself melt into him, into the rightness of this moment. When they broke apart, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. That was worth waiting for, he whispered. Claire smiled, her heart full. Definitely. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park, talking, laughing, occasionally stealing kisses like teenagers. As the sun began to set, Elijah walked Claire back to her apartment. I'd invite you up, Claire said when they reached her building, but I think we should take this slow. Get to know each other in person the way we did through messages. Elijah nodded, understanding in his eyes. I agree. This is too important to rush. He leaned down to kiss her goodnight, a kiss that promised more to come. When can I see you again? He asked, his voice low. I'm free tomorrow, Claire replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. Tomorrow it is. Good night, Claire Whitman. Good night, Elijah Morgan. As Claire watched him walk away, she felt lighter than she had in months, maybe years. She reached for her phone to call Sarah, then hesitated. This moment, this feeling, was too precious to share just yet. Instead, she sent a text to Elijah. Thank you for today, for being real, for being you. His response came quickly. Thank you for being brave enough to meet me, for seeing me the way no one else does. Claire hugged the phone to her chest as she rode the elevator up to her apartment. She had expected to like Elijah in person. She hadn't expected to feel this sense of coming home when she was with him. Over the next few weeks, Claire and Elijah settled into a rhythm of texts during the day and dates whenever their schedules aligned. Claire learned that Elijah liked his coffee black, that he hummed under his breath when he was thinking, that he had a scar on his left hand from a childhood accident. Small details that to him more real, more present in her life than any man had ever been. They still messaged each other constantly, but now their texts were peppered with references to shared moments, inside jokes, plans for the next time they would see each other. Miss your face, Elijah would text during a long shift at the hospital. Miss yours more, Claire would reply, smiling at her phone. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city streets after dinner, Elijah brought up something that had been on Claire's mind as well. I still haven't been to your apartment, he said, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. Are you comfortable with that yet? Claire squeezed his hand. I am. Actually, I was thinking you could come over tomorrow night. I'll cook dinner. Elijah raised an eyebrow. You cook? I have hidden talents, Claire teased. Nothing fancy, but I make a mean lasagna. Sounds perfect, Elijah said, wringing her hand to his lips. What time? 7? I'll text you the address. As soon as she got home, Claire began planning the evening. She wanted everything to be perfect. The food, the atmosphere, the conversation. This felt like a significant step, inviting Elijah into her personal space. The next day, Claire left work early to shop for ingredients and clean her apartment. She changed the sheets on her bed, though she wasn't sure if they would get to Hatfar tonight. Better to be prepared, she thought with a small smile. At exactly 7, there was a knock on her door. Claire smoothed her dress, took a deep breath and opened it to find Elijah standing there with a bouquet of wildflowers and a bottle of wine. "Hi," he said, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Hi yourself," Claire replied, stepping back to let him in. "Come on in." Elijah handed her the flowers and wine, then leaned down to kiss her softly. "Something smells amazing." "Lasagna's in the oven," Claire said, leading him into her small but cozy living room. "And garlic bread. Very fancy." Elijah laughed as he looked around, taking in the colorful throw pillows, the bookshelves crammed with novels, the framed photos on the walls. "Your place suits you," he said. "It's warm, inviting." Claire went to the kitchen to put the flowers in water, and Elijah followed her, leaning against the counter as she moved around the small space. "Can I help with anything?" he asked. "You can open the wine," Claire suggested, handing him a corkscrew. "Glasses are in that cabinet." They worked together comfortably, moving around each other as if they'd done this 100 times before. When the lasagna was ready, they sat at Claire's small dining table, candles flickering between them. "To first dinners," Elijah said, raising his glass, "and hopefully many more." Claire clinked her glass against his. "Many more," she agreed. After dinner, they moved to the couch with their wine. Claire curled up next to Elijah, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wrapped package. "What's this?" Claire asked, sitting up to take it. "Open it and see." Claire carefully unwrapped the paper to find a small, leather-bound notebook. She opened it to find pages filled with Elijah's handwriting. Poems, she realized. "These are for you," he said quietly. "Some of them I wrote before we met, some after. All of them because of you." Claire ran her fingers over the words, emotion welling up in her throat. "Elijah, this is... I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he assured her. "Just read them when you're ready." Claire looked up at him, at this man who had come into her life in such an unexpected way, who had seen her at her most vulnerable and still wanted to know more. "I'm ready now," she said, leaning in to kiss him. The kiss deepened, and Claire felt herself letting go of the last of her reservations. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she took his hand and stood up. "Stay with me tonight," she said softly. Elijah's eyes darkened. "Are you sure?" Claire nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." Later, as they lay tangled in Claire's sheets, Elijah traced patterns on her bare shoulder with his fingertips. "What are you thinking?" Claire asked, looking up at him. "That I never expected this," he replied honestly. "When I answered your message that night, I never imagined we'd end up here." Claire propped herself up on one elbow. "Do you believe in fate?" Elijah considered the question. "I believe that sometimes the universe puts the right person in you, our path, at exactly the moment you need them, whether that's fate or chance or something else entirely. Does it matter?" Claire shook her head. "No. What matters is that it happened." She laid her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Stay for breakfast?" she asked, already half asleep. Elijah pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The next few months were the happiest of Claire's life. She and Elijah fell into a comfortable routine. He would stay at her place when he wasn't working nights. She would visit his small apartment across town on the weekends. They still texted constantly, sharing the small moments of their days when they were apart. One evening, as they were making dinner together in Claire's kitchen, Elijah brought up something they hadn't discussed before. "My grandmother's birthday is next weekend," he said casually, stirring the tar sauce. "She's having a small family gathering. I was hoping you might come with me." Claire looked up from the salad she was making. "You want me to meet your family?" Elijah nodded. "Especially my grandmother. She's the most important person in my life, and so are you." Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "I'd love to meet her." "Fair warning," Elijah said with a smile. "She'll probably ask you a million questions and tell you embarrassing stories about me as a kid. Now I definitely want to go," Claire teased, leaning over to kiss him on the cheek. As the day approached, however, Claire found herself growing nervous. This was a big step, meeting Elijah's family, especially the grandmother who had raised him. What if they didn't like her? What if they thought she wasn't good enough for him? "Stop overthinking," Sarah told her when they met for coffee that week. "They're going to love you because Elijah loves you." Claire nearly choked on her latte. "He hasn't said that yet." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Please, the man looks at you like you hung the moon. Trust me, he loves you." The day of the birthday party, Claire changed her outfit 3 times before settling on a floral dress that was pretty but not too formal. Elijah picked her up in his car, giving her a reassuring smile as she got in. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning over to kiss her. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," Claire replied, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. Elijah's grandmother lived in a neat brick house in a quiet neighborhood about 40 minutes from the city. As they pulled into the driveway, Claire saw balloons tied to the mailbox and several cars already parked on the street. "Deep breath," Elijah said, squeezing her hand. "They're going to love you." The house was warm and filled with the sound of conversation and laughter. As soon as they stepped inside, a small, dignified woman with silver hair and Elijah's same warm eyes approached them. "There's my boy," she said, pulling Elijah into a hug. "And this must be Claire." "Grandma, this is Claire Whitman," Elijah said, his voice filled with pride. "Claire, this is my grandmother, Ruth Morgan." "It's so wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Morgan," Claire said, extending her hand. "Happy birthday." Ruth bypassed Claire's hand entirely and pulled her into a hug. "None of that Mrs. Morgan business. Call me Ruth, and thank you for coming, dear. Elijah has told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Claire said with a nervous laugh. Ruth's eyes twinkled. "The very best things. Now come on in and meet everyone. We don't stand on ceremony in this house." Over the next hour, Claire was introduced to Elijah's aunts, uncles, and cousins. Everyone was warm and welcoming, asking her questions about her job, how she and Elijah met, where she grew up. Claire found herself relaxing, drawn into the family's easy camaraderie. During dinner, Ruth tapped her glass to get everyone's attention. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate with me today. Having my family around me is the greatest gift I could ask for." Her eyes found Elijah and Claire. "And it seems my family is growing in the most wonderful ways." Claire felt Elijah's hand find hers under the table. When she looked at him, the love in his eyes took her breath away. After dinner, while Elijah was helping his cousins clear the table, Ruth beckoned Claire to join her on the porch. "It's a beautiful evening," Ruth said, settling into a rocking chair. "Sometimes I just like to sit out here and count my blessings." Claire sat in the chair next to her, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "You have a lovely home, Ruth, and a wonderful family." "Thank you, dear, I've been blessed." Ruth turned to look at Claire directly. "Especially with that grandson of mine. He's always been special, thoughtful, kind, with an old soul, but I've never seen him as happy as he is with you." Claire felt tears prick at her eyes. "He makes me happy too, happier than I ever thought I could be." Ruth reached over to pat Claire's hand. "Love is a precious thing, Claire. When you find the real thing, you hold on to it with both hands." "I plan to," Claire said softly, watching through the window as Elijah laughed with his cousins in the kitchen. Later that night, as Elijah drove them back to the city, Claire felt a deep sense of contentment settle over her. "Your family is amazing," she said, looking over at him. "Especially your grandmother." Elijah smiled. "They loved you, especially my grandmother." "How can you tell?" "She gave you her special hug, the one she saves for people who are going to be around for a long time." Claire's heart skipped a beat. "Is that right?" Elijah reached over to take her hand, bringing it to his lips. "That's right. If you want to be, that is." "I do," Claire said without hesitation. "I want to be around for a very long time, Elijah Morgan." When they reached Claire's apartment, neither of them was ready for the day to end. They sat on her couch, talking softly, sharing memories of the day. "I have something I need to tell you," Elijah said, his expression suddenly serious. Claire felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "I've been offered a job, a good one at Memorial Hospital. Better hours, better pay." "Elijah, that's wonderful," Claire exclaimed, relief washing over her. "Why do you look so serious?" "Because it would mean no more night shifts, more time to write, more time with you." He took a deep breath. "And I was thinking that maybe, if you wanted to, we could look for a place together, somewhere between your work and mine. A fresh start for both of us." Claire felt her eyes fill with tears. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" Elijah nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I am. But that's not all I'm asking." He took her hands in his. "Claire Whitman, I never expected to find you. Never expected that a wrong number would lead me to the right woman. But now that I have you, I don't want to spend another day wondering if you know how much I love you." Claire's breath caught in her throat. "You love me." "With every part of me," Elijah said, his voice steady and sure. "I love your strength, your kindness, your beautiful heart. I love the way you see me, not just what I look like or what I do, but who I am, inside. I love you, Claire, and I want to build a life with you." Claire couldn't hold back her tears now. "I love you too, Elijah, so much. And yes, yes to all of it, living together, building a life, everything." Elijah pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "You've changed everything for me," he whispered against her hair. "Everything." That night, as Claire lay in Elijah's arms, she thought about the path that had led her here, the heartbreak that had seemed so devastating at the time, the mistaken message that had found its way to the one person who could heal her heart, the courage it had taken to meet him, to trust again, to love again. "What are you thinking about?" Elijah asked sleepily, his arm tightening around her. "How sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best ones," Claire replied, nestling closer to him. "If Mark hadn't cheated, if I hadn't sent that message, if you hadn't answered." "But you did, and I did," Elijah said simply. "And here we are." "Here we are," Claire echoed, closing her eyes. "Exactly where we're meant to be." But as Claire drifted off to sleep, she didn't know that their journey was far from over, that the bonds of their love would soon be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, that the message that had found her was just the beginning of their story. Because at that very moment across town, Mark Daniels was sitting in his car outside Elijah's apartment building, staring at a photo of Claire on his phone. A photo taken earlier that day as she and Elijah had left for the birthday party, laughing together, hand in hand. "She deserves better," Mark muttered to himself, his eyes dark with jealousy and regret. "But better isn't him. It's me. It's always been me." He started the engine, a plan already forming in his mind. Claire Whitman had moved on, but Mark wasn't ready to let go. Not yet, not ever. The new apartment was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a spacious living room with large windows that let in plenty of natural light, and a kitchen that made Claire's heart sing. It was on the 3rd floor of a renovated brownstone, halfway between Elijah's hospital and Claire's design studio. "What do you think?" Elijah asked as they stood in the empty living room, his arm around Claire's waist. "Can you see us here?" Claire leaned into him, imagining their furniture arranged in the space, pictures on the walls, books on shelves, a home they would build together. "It's perfect," she said. "I love it." Elijah pressed a kiss to her temple. "Then it's ours. I'll call the landlord and tell him we'll take it." As Elijah stepped away to make the call, Claire walked to the window, looking out at the tree-lined street below. So much had changed in the 6 months since she'd sent that accidental message. She had gone from heartbroken and lost to happier than she'd ever been, all because of a wrong number and the beautiful soul who had answered it. They signed the lease that afternoon and set a move-in date for the following month. As they walked back to Claire's car, hand in hand, Claire couldn't help but feel that everything was finally falling into place. "Let's celebrate tonight," Elijah suggested. "Dinner at Antonio's?" Claire smiled up at him. Antonio's was where they'd had their first real dinner date, a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and the best tiramisu in the city. "Perfect," she agreed. "I need to stop by the studio first to drop off these client sketches. Meet you there at 7? Elijah nodded. leaning down to kiss her goodbye. "I love you," he said against her lips, as if he couldn't say it enough. "I love you too," Claire replied, her heart still skipping a beat at the words. As she drove to her stud IO, Claire's mind was filled with plans for their new place. She was so distracted that she almost didn't notice the car that had been following her since they left the apartment building. Almost. It wasn't until she parked outside her small design studio that she spotted it, a familiar silver sedan pulling up across the street. Claire froze, her hand on the door handle as Mark Daniels stepped out of the car. He looked different somehow, thinner, his USU ally perfect hair a bit unkempt, his eyes shadowed as if he hadn't been sleeping well. But it was definitely him. Claire's first instinct was to drive away, to avoid this confrontation entirely. But she was tired of running from her past. Taking a deep breath, she got out of her car and faced the man who had once been her entire future. "What are you doing here, Mark?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, a tentative smile on his face. "I've been trying to reach you, Claire. You changed your number." "For good reason," Claire replied coldly. "I have nothing to say to you." Mark winced, as if her words had physically hurt him. "I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but I've changed, Claire. These last months without you, they've been hell." Claire crossed her arms, unmoved by his apparent suffering. "That's not my problem anymore. Please leave." "Just give me 5 minutes," Mark pleaded. 5 minutes to explain, to apologize properly. Then if you still want me to go, I will, I promise." Claire hesitated. Maybe hearing him out would give her some closure, a final end to that chapter of her life. 5 minutes, she agreed reluctantly, but not here. There's a coffee shop around the corner. She led the way, keeping a careful distance between them. The coffee shop was nearly empty in the late afternoon lull. Claire chose a table near the window, in full view of anyone passing by. She didn't want to be alone with Mark, not really. "So talk," she said, after they'd sat down, not bothering to order anything. This wasn't a social visit. Mark leaned forward, his expression earnest. "First, I want to say I'm sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way." "With my bridesmaid," Claire added, the hurt still fresh, despite everything. "Yes," Mark admitted, his eyes dropping to the table. "There's no excuse for it. None. I was stressed about the wedding, about our future, and I made the biggest mistake of my life." Claire studied him, searching for the man she had once loved enough to marry. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished. "Why are you here, Mark?" "Really?" "Because I still love you," he said simply, looking up to meet her eyes. "Because I know I can make it right if you'll just give me another chance." Claire shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even hurt. What you did was terrible, but it led me to someone better. I'm happy now, Mark. Truly happy." Mark's expression hardened slightly. "With him? That nurse? I've seen you together. Do you really think he can give you the life I could? The security, the status?" Claire felt a flash of anger. "Is that what you think I want? Status? I want someone who respects me, who values me, who would never betray me the way you did. Elijah is twice the man you'll ever be." "You don't know him," Mark insisted, his voice taking on an edge. "You've only known him what, a few months? We were together for 6 years, Claire. 6 years of history that you're just throwing away." "I'm not throwing anything away," Claire said firmly. "I'm choosing happiness. I'm choosing love. Something I never really had with you, though I convinced myself I did." Mark reached across the table to grab her hand, but Claire pulled back. "Claire, please. We can start over. I've learned my lesson. I'll never hurt you again." "Your 5 minutes are up," Claire said, standing. "Goodbye, Mark." She turned to leave, but his next words stopped her cold. "I know about the messages," he said. "I know how you met. A wrong number, Claire, really. Hey, how do you know he didn't plan it all? How do you know it wasn't some sick game to prey on a vulnerable woman?" Claire turned back slowly. "What are you talking about? How could you possibly know about that?" Mark's smile was unpleasant. "I have friends at the phone company. It wasn't hard to get your new number to check your records. 1 digit off from my number? That's quite a coincidence, don't you think?" Claire felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that Mark had been checking her phone records, monitoring her calls and messages, was deeply disturbing. "You had no right," she said, her voice shaking now. "Stay away from me, Mark. Stay away from us." "He'll hurt you too, Claire," Mark called after her as she walked away. "Maybe not the same way I did, but he'll hurt you, and when he does, I'll be waiting." Claire hurried to her car, hands trembling as she fumbled with her keys. Once inside, she locked the doors and took several deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. She checked her rearview mirror, relieved to see that Mark wasn't following her. She should call Elijah, tell him what had happened, but not yet. Not until she was calm, until she could think clearly. The last thing she wanted was for Elijah to confront Mark. Who knew what Mark might do? Instead, she drove to her studio, focusing on the familiar routine of work to steady her nerves. She would tell Elijah tonight, she decided. They would handle this together, as they handled everything. Antonio's was busy that evening, the warm lighting and delicious smells creating a cozy atmosphere that usually made Claire feel instantly at ease. But tonight, she couldn't shake the uneasiness that had settled over her after her encounter with Mark. "You're a million miles away," Elijah observed as they waited for their entrees. "Tough day at the Sant Udio?" Claire hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I saw Mark today," she said, watching Elijah's expression carefully. "He was waiting for me outside the studio." Elijah's eyes darkened with concern. "What did he want?" "To apologize. To try to get me back." Claire shook her head. "But there was something off about him, Elijah. He said things that worried me." "What kind of things?" Elijah asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. Claire told him about Mark's comments, about his admission that he'd been checking her phone records. "He implied that our meeting wasn't an accident, that you somehow planned it all." Elijah's expression was a mixture of anger and disbelief. "That's ridiculous. How could I possibly have known you'd text the wrong number that night? How could I have known anything about you at all?" "I know," Claire assured him. "I know it's not true, but Mark seemed so desperate, almost dangerous." Elijah squeezed her hand. "Do you think we should go to the police? File a report about him invading your privacy?" Claire considered this. "I don't know if they could do anything, but maybe we should document it, just in case he tries something else." Their food arrived, but neither of them had much appetite anymore. Elijah watched Claire pick at her pasta, concern evident in his eyes. "Don't let him take this from us," he said softly. That's what he wants, to get in your head, to make you doubt what we have." Claire looked up, meeting Elijah's steady gaze. "He can't. What we have is real. More real than anything I've ever known." Elijah smiled, the warmth returning to his eyes. "That's my girl." After dinner, they decided to go back to Elijah's apartment. Claire didn't feel comfortable returning to her place, not knowing if Mark might be waiting for her. "Stay with me until we move into the new place," Elijah suggested as they drove. "Your lease is up in a few weeks anyway." Claire nodded, grateful for his understanding. "I just need to grab some clothes and my work stuff. Are you sure you don't mind?" "Mind having you with me every night?" Elijah glanced over at her with a smile. "Hardly." They stopped by Claire's apartment first. Elijah insisted on coming up with her, both of them scanning the street for any sign of Mark or his car. The apartment was empty and undisturbed, much to Claire's relief. As she packed a suitcase with enough clothes to last until the move, Elijah checked the locks on her windows and door. "We should have your mail forwarded to my place," he suggested, "just to be safe." Claire agreed, and they were back in the car within 20 minutes. As they drove to Elijah's apartment, neither of them noticed the silver sedan parked half a block away, its driver watching them through narrowed eyes. The next few weeks passed without incident. Claire stayed at Elijah's apartment, and they spent their free time planning for the move, shopping for furniture for their new place, and enjoying the simple pleasure of building a life together. Claire almost managed to put the encounter with Mark out of her mind. Almost. Then the flowers arrived at her studio, A massive arrangement of red roses, her least favorite flower, though Mark had never seemed to remember that. The card simply read, "I'm not giving up on us. Emma." Claire threw the flowers in the trash and called Elijah immediately. "He sent flowers to my work," she said without preamble when he answered. "Red roses, with a note saying he's not giving up." Elijah's voice was calm, though she could hear the tension underneath. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come get you?" "No, I'm fine," Claire assured him. "Just rattled. I thought he'd gotten the message. Some men don't hear what they don't want to hear," Elijah said grimly. "Do you want me to talk to him?" "Absolutely not," Claire replied immediately. "That's exactly what he wants, to provoke a confrontation. Let's just ignore him. The move is in 2 weeks. Maybe once we're out of our old places, he'll get the hint." "Maybe," Elijah agreed, though he didn't sound convinced. "Just be careful, okay? Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it." "I won't," Claire promised. "I love you." "Love you too. See you tonight." But the flowers were just the beginning. The next day, Claire received multiple calls from a blocked number. When she finally answered in frustration, there was only silence on the other end. The day after that, she found a note slipped under the door of her studio when she arrived in the morning. "He's not who you think he is. Check his past." Claire crumpled the note and threw it away, trying to ignore the seed of doubt it was meant to plant. This was what Mark wanted, to make her question Elijah, to create a wedge between them. She didn't tell Elijah about the note or the calls. He was already worried enough, and she didn't want to add to his stress. Besides, they were almost free of their old lives, just a little longer, and they would be settled in their new home, their new beginning. But Mark wasn't done yet. A week before the move, Claire was working late at her studio, finalizing designs for a major client. It was past 9 when she finally packed up to leave, the street outside dark and quiet. She had just locked the studio door when she felt a presence behind her. "Working late?" Claire whirled around to find Mark leaning against the wall, his casual pose belied by the intensity in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her hand automatically going to her phone in her pocket. "Waiting for you," Mark said simply. "We need to talk, Claire." "No, we don't," Claire replied firmly, moving toward her car. "I've said everything I need to say to you." Mark stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Did you check up on him? Your perfect nurse with the poet's heart?" Claire tried to step around him. "Move, Mark. I'm not doing this. He's hiding things from you," Mark persisted, following her. "I hired someone to look into his background. There are gaps, Claire. Times when he just disappeared. Don't you want to know why?" Claire stopped, turning to face him. "What I want is for you to leave me alone. What part of that don't you understand? The part where you throw away everything we had for someone you barely know." Mark snapped his composure slipping. "The part where you won't even listen to reason." "Reason?" Claire laughed incredulously. "You're stalking me, Mark. You're checking my phone records, following me, sending creepy messages. That's not reason, that's obsession." Mark's expression hardened. "I'm trying to protect you." "No, you're trying to control me," Claire corrected him, "just like you always did. I just didn't see it until now." She tried again to move past Hyam to her car, but Mark grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "Let go of me," Claire said, her voice low and dangerous. "Not until you listen," Mark insisted, pulling her closer. "He's not good enough for you, Claire. He never will be." "And you are?" Claire wrenched her arm free. "A man who cheated on me weeks before our wedding? A man who's now stalking me because his ego can't handle rejection?" Mark's face contorted with anger. "You'll regret this. When he shows his true colors, when he hurts you, you'll remember this moment." "The only one hurting me right now is you," Claire said, finally reaching her car. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking. Mark watched her, his expression unreadable in the dim streetlight. "This isn't over, Claire." "Yes, it is," came a deep voice from behind them. Claire looked up to see Elijah walking toward them, his face set in a grim expression she'd never seen before. "Elijah," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Everything okay here?" Elijah asked, his eyes never leaving Mark. "Just fine," Mark replied with a cold smile. Claire and I were just catching up. Didn't look like catching up to me, Elijah said, moving to stand beside Claire. Looked like harassment. Mark sized Elijah up, his stance aggressive despite the fact that Elijah was several inches taller. This doesn't concern you. Claire concerns me, Elijah replied evenly. And you're upsetting her. How did you know I was here? Claire asked Elijah quietly. You weren't answering your phone. I got worried and tracked your location. Elijah kept his eyes on Mark as he spoke. I'm glad I did. Mark laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet street. Tracking her phone? And you call me controlling? I call you trespassing, Elijah said firmly. Claire asked you to leave her alone. Respect her wishes before this becomes a legal matter. The two men stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Claire held her breath, afraid of what might happen next. Finally, Mark stepped back. This isn't over, he repeated, looking at Claire. Not by a long shot. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Claire sagged against her car, the adrenaline draining from her body. Are you okay? Elijah asked, pulling her into his... No, I'm fine. Just shaken up. How did you know to come? You mentioned you were working late. When you didn't answer my calls or texts, I got worried. Elijah stroked her hair gently. I'm sorry if tracking your phone was overstepping. I just had a bad feeling. No, I'm glad you did, Claire assured him, looking up into his concerned face. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up. Elijah's expression darkened. We need to report this, Claire. He grabbed you. That's assault. Claire nodded, too tired to argue. Tomorrow, right now, I just want to go home. Elijah drove her car, and they stopped at the police station on the way back to his apartment despite Claire's protests. They filed a report about Mark's harassment, and the officer recommended Claire consider a restraining order. It might not stop him entirely, the officer explained, but it gives us grounds to arrest him if he violates it. Claire agreed to think about it, though the idea of drawing out the drama with legal proceedings made her stomach churn. She just wanted it to be over, to start her new life with Elijah without this shadow hanging over them. That night, as they lay in bed, Elijah held her close, his steady heartbeat a comfort against her ear. You know we can delay the move if you want, he said softly. Give this situation time to calm down. Claire shook her head. No, I won't let him control our lives. We're moving as planned. Elijah kissed the top of her head. Whatever you want, I'm with you all the way. Claire was almost asleep when a thought occurred to her. Elijah? What did Mark mean about gaps in your past? About you disappearing? She felt him tense slightly beneath her. I don't know. I've never disappeared anywhere. He said he hired someone to look into your background, Claire continued, lifting her head to look at him in the dim light. Elijah's expression was troubled. There's nothing to find, Claire. I've always been right here, working, writing, living my life. Claire nodded, settling back against his chest. I know. I just wondered what he was talking about. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. There was a time, after my first book of poetry was rejected by every publisher in the city, when I went through a rough patch. I was in a dark place. I withdrew from friends, family, even took a leave from work for a while. You never told me that, Claire said softly. It's not something I'm proud of, Elijah admitted, but I got help, came back stronger. Maybe that's what he found, a few months when I wasn't exactly myself. Claire hugged him tighter. Thank you for telling me. There are no secrets between us, Claire, Elijah H. assured her. Nothing that matters anyway. As Claire drifted off to sleep, she pushed away the last lingering doubts that Mark had tried to plant. She knew Elijah, knew his heart, his soul. Whatever Mark thought he had found, it didn't change who Elijah was or what they had together. The day of the move dawned bright and clear. Claire had spent the previous day packing up the last of her belongings, her excitement growing with each box sealed. A fresh start, a new chapter. Elijah had hired movers to make the process easier, and by mid-afternoon, all of their things were in the new apartment. Boxes were stacked in every room, waiting to be unpacked. But it was already starting to feel like home. What do you think? Elijah asked as they stood in the middle of the living room, surveying their combined possessions. Where should we start? Claire considered the chaos around them. Bedroom first, she decided, so we at least have somewhere comfortable to sleep tonight. They worked together, unpacking clothes, assembling the bed frame, making the bed with new sheets they had bought for the occasion. By evening, the bedroom was habitable, and they had made a dent in the kitchen boxes as well. I think we deserve a break, Elijah declared, collapsing onto the couch they had positioned by the window. And food, definitely food. Claire smiled, curling up beside him. Pizza? Perfect, Elijah agreed, pulling out his phone to place an order. As they waited for the delivery, Claire looked around at their half-unpacked apartment and felt a surge of happiness. This was their home, their space, their future. Happy? Elijah asked, noticing her expression. Claire nodded, leaning over to kiss him. Very. This feels right, doesn't it? It does, Elijah agreed, pulling her closer. Like we were always meant to end up here. The pizza arrived, and they ate sitting cross-legged on the floor, using a box as a makeshift table. They talked about where to hang pictures, which bookshelf would go whether the blue armchair would look better in the corner or by the window. I almost forgot, Elijah said suddenly, setting down his slice. I have something for you, a housewarming gift. He went to one of the boxes marked Elijah Personal and rummaged through it, finally pulling out a small wrapped package. What is this? Claire asked, taking it from him. Open it and see, Elijah replied with a smile. Claire unwrapped the package to find a beautiful leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with her initials. Inside, the first page held an inscription in Elijah's elegant handwriting. For Claire, who found me with her words. May this journal hold the next chapter of our story. All my love, Elijah. It's beautiful, Claire essayed, running her fingers over the smooth leather. Thank you. I thought you might want to start writing too, Elijah explained. Your words are just as beautiful as any drawing you've ever made. Claire leaned over to kiss him, pouring all her love into the gesture. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you too, Elijah replied, his arms encircling her. They made love that night on their new bed, in their new home, the moonlight streaming through the windows they hadn't yet hung curtains on. Afterward, Claire lay in Elijah's arms, feeling more content than she had ever thought possible. I'm going to get some water, she said eventually, slipping out of bed and pulling on Elijah's discarded shirt. Want anything? Just you, Elijah murmured sleepily. Hurry back. Claire padded barefoot to the kitchen, navigating around boxes in the dim light. She had just filled a glass when a movement outside the window caught her eye. A shadow, quickly disappearing from view. Her heart racing, Claire moved closer to the window, peering out into the darkness. The street below was empty, quiet. Had she imagined it? She was about to turn away when she saw it. A silver sedan parked across the street, its interior dark. The same car she had seen following her before. Mark's car. Claire's hand tightened on the glass. He had found them. Found their new home, their sanctuary. The place that was supposed to be their fresh start. She didn't tell Elijah, not that night. He was already asleep when she returned to bed, and she didn't have the heart to wake him, to bring Mark's shadow into their first night in their new home. But as she lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, Claire wondered if they would ever truly be free of her past, if Mark would ever let her go. And most troubling of all, she wondered what lengths he might go to in his obsession to win her back. The next morning, Claire woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Elijah moving around in the kitchen. For a moment, the events of the night before seemed like a bad dream, but the knot of anxiety in her stomach told her otherwise. She found Elijah in the kitchen, unpacking dishes and arranging them in the cabinets. He looked up with a smile when he saw her. Morning, beautiful, he said, coming over to kiss her. Sleep well? Claire nodded, forcing a smile. Like a rock. You? Best sleep I've had in ages, Elijah replied, handing her a mug of coffee. Must be the company. Claire took the coffee gratefully, warming her hands on the mug. Elijah, there's something I need to tell you. His expression grew serious. What is it? Claire took a deep breath. I think Mark was outside last night. I saw his car across the street when I got up for water. Elijah's face darkened. Are you sure it was his car? Pretty sure, Claire said. Silver sedan, same model. Elijah set down his coffee mug with more force than necessary. That's it. We're getting that restraining order today. Claire didn't argue. The sight of Mark's car outside their new home had crossed a line. This wasn't just annoying anymore. It was frightening. They spent the morning at the courthouse filing the paperwork for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted it immediately based on the police report they had filed and Claire's testimony about Mark as escalating behavior. He has to stay at least 500 feet away from you, your home and your workplace, the clerk explained as she handed Claire the official documents. If he violates this order, call the police immediately. Claire nodded, tucking the papers into her purse. She felt both relieved and sad, relieved to have some legal protection, sad that it had come to this with someone she had once loved enough to marry. As they left the courthouse, Elijah's phone rang. He frowned at the screen. It's the hospital, I need to take this. Claire waited as he stepped away to answer the call. From his expression, she could tell it wasn't good news. Everything okay? She asked when he returned. One of my patients took a turn for the worse, Elijah explained, his face troubled. They're asking me if I can come in even though it's my day off. Of course you should go, Claire said immediately. I'll be fine, I have plenty of unpacking to keep me busy. Elijah hesitated. I don't like leaving you alone, not with Mark still out there. He won't know you're gone, Claire reasoned, and I have the restraining order now. I'll be careful, I promise. Still looking uncertain, Elijah finally nodded. I shouldn't be more than a few hours. Call me if anything, and I mean anything, seems off. I will, Claire promised, standing on tiptoe to kiss him goodbye. Now go save a life. After Elijah left, Claire returned to the apartment and threw herself into unpacking. She organized the kitchen, arranged their books on the shelves, hung pictures on the walls. By late afternoon, the place was starting to look like a real home. She was hanging the last of their photos, a candid shot of her and Elijah at his grandmother's birthday party, when there was a knock at the door. Claire froze, her heart suddenly pounding. No one knew their new address except the moving company and Elijah's grandmother. And Mark, apparently, if he had found them last night. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Claire set down the picture frame and moved cautiously to the door. There was no peephole, an oversight they had already planned to correct. Who is it? She called, her hand on the chain lock. Delivery for Claire Whitman, came the reply, a voice she didn't recognize. Claire hesitated. She hadn't ordered anything, but maybe Elijah had, as another surprise. Just leave it outside the door, please, Shikal led back. Need a signature, the voice insisted. Won't take but a second. Against her better judgment, Claire unlatched the chain and opened the door a crack. The man standing there wore a cap pulled low over his eyes and held a small package in his hands. He looked up, and Claire's blood ran cold. It was Mark. Surprise, he said softly, pushing against the door before Claire could close it. Claire threw her weight against the door, but Mark was stronger. He forced his way inside, shoving Claire backward. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the couch. What are you doing? She demanded, reaching for her phone on the coffee table. There's a restraining order against you. You can't be here. Mark snatched the phone before she could grab it. A piece of paper doesn't change how I feel about you, Claire. It doesn't change what we were to each other. Claire backed away from him, her mind racing. Elijah wouldn't be back for hours. The neighbors were strangers. They might not hear her if she screamed. Her phone was in Mark's hand. What do you want? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I want you to listen, Mark said, his tone reasonable despite the wild look in his eyes. I found things, Claire. Things about your perfect boyfriend that you need to know. I don't care what you found, Claire replied, edging toward the kitchen. If she could reach the knife block on the counter. Mark pulled a folded sheaf of papers from his jacket pocket. His real name isn't even Elijah Morgan. Did you know that? Claire stopped, her resolve faltering for just a moment. What are you talking about? He changed his name 5 years ago, Mark continued, a triumphant gleam in his eyes, after he got out of prison. That's a lie, Claire said firmly, but doubt crept into her voice. Elijah isn't a criminal. 3 years for aggravated assault, Mark counted, holding out the papers. He nearly beat a man to death, Claire, the man his fiancée was sleeping with. Claire stared at the papers, unwilling to take them, unwilling to believe what Mark was saying. Even if that were true, which I don't believe for a second, people change. People make mistakes. Do they? Mark stepped closer. Or do they just hide who they really are? Think about it, Claire. The Enigite shifts, the mysterious past he never talks about, the way he conveniently appeared in your life just when you were at your most vulnerable. Claire shook her head, refusing to let Mark's words take root. Stop it, just stop. Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested. It's not a game, Mark insisted, his voice rising. I'm trying to protect you from a dangerous man. The only dangerous man in my life is you, Claire shot back. Breaking into MY home, stalking me, harassing me. You need help, Mark. Mark's face contorted with anger. I need help? Your boyfriend is an ex-con with a history of violence, and I need help? He advanced on her, backing her against the wall. Claire felt her heart hammering in her chest, fear making it hard to breathe. Get out, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Get out now, or I'm calling the police. With what phone? Mark taunted, holding up her cell. Face it, Claire. You're not going anywhere until you hear me out. Claire glanced toward the door, calculating her chances of making it past him. Not good. Mark saw the look and smiled unpleasantly. Don't even think about it, he warned. I just want to talk, that's all. Fine, Claire said, playing for time. Talk, but from over there. She pointed to the couch several feet away. Surprisingly, Mark complied, moving to sit on the edge of the couch. He set her phone down on the coffee table, just out of her reach. I never stopped loving you, he said, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. Even after you left. Even after you moved on. I tried to let you go, Claire. I really did. But then, I saw you with him, and I knew I had to do something. So you decided to stalk me? Claire asked incredulously, to dig up lies about Elijah. They're not lies, Mark insisted, pushing the papers toward her. See for yourself, his real name was Elijah Carter. He changed it after he got out of prison. I have the court records right here. Claire refused to look at the papers. I don't care what's in those documents. I know Elijah. I know his heart. Do you? Mark challenged. Did he tell you about his violent past? About the man he nearly killed? About the fiancée who left him after she saw what he was really capable of? A seed of doubt took root in Claire's mind, despite her best efforts to ignore it. Elijah had mentioned a rough patch, a time when he withdrew from everyone. Could this be what he meant? No, she told herself firmly. Elijah would have told her something this important. You're twisting things, Claire said. Even if there is some truth in those papers, I'm sure there's an explanation. The explanation is that he's dangerous, Mark insisted, and he's hiding his past from you. Why would he do that, lest he had something to be ashamed of? Claire saw an opportunity as Mark became more animated in his accusations. Her phone was still on the coffee table, and Mark had shifted forward, focused on convincing her. Maybe you're right, she said, taking a small step toward the coffee table. Maybe I should look at those papers. Mark's expression brightened. Finally, you're being reasonable. Another step. I just want to understand what you're saying, Claire continued, her eyes fixed on Mark's face, not on her true target. I knew you would, Mark said eagerly. I knew deep down you still cared about the truth about us. One more step brought Claire within reach of the coffee table. In one swift movement, she lunged for her phone, snatching it up before Mark could react. Claire, don't, Mark started, reaching for her, but Claire was already dialing 911, backing away from him toward the door. Emergency services, what's your emergency? Came the operator's voice. There's a man in my apartment, Claire said quickly. He broke in. There's a restraining order against him. Mark's face contorted with rage. You're making a mistake, he growled, advancing on her. My address is 375 Oakwood Avenue, apartment 3B, Claire continued, her voice remarkably steady despite her racing heart. Please hurry. She ended the call and held the phone in front of her like a shield. They're on their way, Mark. You should leave now if you don't want to be arrested. Mark hesitated, clearly weighing his options. "This isn't over," he said finally. "One day you'll see I was right about him." "Get out," Claire repeated, standing her ground. With a last, venomous look, Mark snatched up his papers and stalked to the door. "You'll regret this," he said over his shoulder. "When he hurts you, remember I tried to warn you." Then he was gone, the door slamming behind him. Claire immediately locked it, then collapsed against the wall, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Her hands shook as she called Elijah. "Claire, everything okay?" His voice was like a lifeline. "Mark was here," she said, trying to keep her voice from breaking. "In the apartment. He said things about you, Elijah. Things I know aren't true." There was a brief silence on the other end. "I'm on my way home, Ellie." Elijah said, his voice tight with concern. "Did you call the police?" "Yes," Claire confirmed. "They're coming." "Good. Stay on the phone with me until they get there. I'm leaving the hospital now." Claire felt tears of relief slip down her cheeks. "Okay, Elijah. He had papers, documents. He said your real name is Elijah Carter, that you were in prison." Another silence, longer this time. "Claire," Elijah began, his voice strange. But before he could continue, there was a knock at the door. "Police! Anyone home?" "The police are here," Claire told Elijah, moving cautiously toward the door. "I need to let them in." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Elijah promised. "We'll talk then. I love you, Claire." "I love you too," Claire replied automatically, though her mind was racing with questions. She opened the door to find two officers standing there, hands near their holsters. "Ms. Whitman?" one asked. "We got a call about an intruder." "Yes," Claire confirmed, stepping back to let them in. "He's gone now, but he broke in. I have a restraining order against him." The officers took her statement, examined the door for signs of forced entry, and promised to patrol the area for the next few hours. They were still there when Elijah arrived, breathless and worried. "Claire," he said, pulling her into his arms the moment he saw her. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Claire shook her head against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. "I'm fine. Just shaken up." The officers took Elijah's statement as well, then left with a promise to file a report and look for Mark. When they were gone, a heavy silence fell over the apartment. "We need to talk," Claire said finally, turning to face Elijah. "About what Mark said." Elijah's expression was pained. "Let's sit down." They moved to the couch, Claire keeping a small distance between them. Her heart was pounding again, but for a different reason now. "Is it true?" she asked simply. "Were you in prison?" Elijah closed his eyes briefly, then met her gaze. "Yes." The single word hit Claire like a physical blow. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed," Elijah admitted, his voice low. "Because I wanted to be the man you thought I was, not the man I used to be." "Who are you then?" Claire asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Is your name even Elijah Morgan?" "It is now, legally," Elijah said. "I changed it after I got out, after I moved here to start over." Claire wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Tell me what happened, all of it." Elijah took a deep breath. "I was engaged to a woman named Rebecca. We were together for 2 years. I thought everything was perfect." He gave a bitter laugh. "Sound familiar?" Claire nodded, a lump forming in her theorn. "Duh, I caught her with my best friend," Elijah continued, "in our bed. I lost control. I beat him so badly he was in the hospital for weeks. They charged me with aggravated assault." 3 years, Claire murmured, remembering Mark's words. Elijah nodded. "I served 3 years. When I got out, I knew I needed to change everything about my life, my name, my city, my career. I went back to school to become a nurse, started writing poetry as a way to process my anger, my pain." "And you never thought to tell me any of this?" Claire asked, hurt evident in her voice. "Even after everything we've shared?" "I wanted to," Elijah insisted, reaching for her hand. Claire let him take it, though she didn't squeeze back. "So many times I came close, but I was afraid, Claire. Afraid you'd look at me differently, afraid you'd see me as damaged, dangerous. Like Mark said, Claire whispered. Elijah's face darkened. Mark twisted the truth to serve his purpose. Yes, I made a terrible mistake. Yes, I paid for it. But I'm not that person anymore, Claire. The man who went to prison died there. The man sitting before you now, the man who loves you, he was born in that cell, from the ashes of who I used to be. Claire was quiet for a long time, processing everything she'd heard. Part of her was angry that Elijah had kept such a huge secret from her. Another part understood why he had. I need some time, she said finally, to think about all this. Elijah nodded, pain evident in his eyes. I understand. Should I? Do you want me to leave? Claire shook her head. No, this is your home too, but I need some space right now. She stood and walked to the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. Once alone, she allowed the tears to come, silent sobs that shook her body as she curled up on their bed. Everything had been so perfect. Their connection, their love, their future. And now this revelation had cast a shadow over it all. Not because of what Elijah had done. Claire could understand a moment of blind rage, of loss of control, but because he hadn't trusted her enough to tell her the truth. As the evening turned to night, Claire lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. She heard Elijah moving quietly around the apartment, respecting her need for solitude. Her mind replayed their entire relationship, looking for signs she might have missed, moments when he could have told her the truth. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at the bedroom door. Claire? Elijah called quietly. I made some tea if you want it. Claire sat up, wiping her eyes. Come in. Elijah entered, carrying 2 steaming mugs. He handed one to Claire, then hesitated, clearly unsure if he should sit beside her. It's okay, Claire said, patting the bed next to her. Sit. He perched on the edge of the bed, cradling his own mug. I'm sorry, he said simply. For not telling you. For letting you find out this way. Claire took a sip of the tea, letting its warmth soothe her. I understand why you didn't tell me at first, when we were just strangers texting. But later, Elijah, after everything we shared. I know, Elijah acknowledged. There were so many times I almost told you. The night you first stayed over. The day we decided to move in together. But each time I was afraid it would change how you saw me. It does change how I see you, Claire admitted. But not in the way you think, not because of what you did, but because you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Elijah's shoulders slumped. I do trust you, Claire. More than anyone, I was a coward. I was so happy with you, so grateful for the life we were building, that I couldn't bear the thought of losing it all. Claire set down her mug and turned to face him fully. Is there anything else I should know? Any other secrets? Elijah shook his head. No, that's it. The whole ugly truth. And the poetry, the nursing, those parts were real? All real, Elijah assured her. Everything I've told you about my life since prison has been the truth. It's just the before that I kept hidden. Claire nodded slowly. I need you to promise me something. Anything, Elijah said immediately. No more secrets. Ever. No matter how hard the truth might be. Elijah set down his own mug and took both her hands in his. I promise, Claire. No more secrets. Claire searched his face, looking for any hint of deception. She found only sincerity and love and fear that he might lose her. I love you, she said finally. That hasn't changed, but trust once broken takes time to rebuild. I need that timey, Elijah. You have it, he promised. All the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Claire leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. Neither am I. They stayed that way for a long moment, breathing together, reconnecting. When Claire finally pulled back, she felt something shift between them, not a breaking, but a deepening. A relationship tested by fire and emerging stronger, if a little scarred. Will you hold me tonight? She asked softly. Just hold me. Elijah nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Always. They settled into bed together, Elijah's arms around Claire, her head on his chest. Neither slept much that night, both lost in their own thoughts, their own fears and hopes. But they were together. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, Claire woke to find Elijah already up, the smell of coffee once again filling the apartment. She found him in the kitchen cooking breakfast. "Morning?" he said cautiously when he saw her, unsure of where they stood in the light of day. Claire walked to him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Morning," she replied. She felt the tension leave his body at her touch. "Pancakes?" he offered, turning in her arms to face her. "Sounds perfect," Claire agreed with a small smile. They ate breakfast in a comfortable silence, stealing glances at each other across the table. It was on to return to normal. Claire knew it would be a while before they found their new normal, but it was a beginning. After breakfast, as they were washing the dishes together, Claire broached the subject they had both been avoiding. "We need to do something about Mark," she said. "He violated the restraining order once. He'll do it again." Elijah nodded grimly. "I've been thinking about that. We should call the detective handling your case. Let them know what happened." "I will," Claire agreed, "but I'm also thinking we might need to be more proactive." "What do you mean?" Elijah asked, setting down the dish towel. Claire turned to face him. "I mean, we need to confront this head-on. Mark is using your past as a weapon against us. Maybe we need to take that power away from him." Elijah looked confused. "How?" "By owning your story," Claire explained. "By not letting it be this shameful secret he can hold over our heads." Understanding dawned in Elijah's eyes. "You want me to confront him?" "I want us to confront him," Claire corrected. "Together, to show him that his games won't work anymore, that I know everything and I'm still choosing you." Elijah considered this, his expression thoughtful. "It could work, or it could make him even more desperate." "He's already breaking into our home," Claire pointed out. "How much more desperate can he get?" A shadow crossed Elijah's face. "You'd be surprised what desperation can drive a person to do." Claire knew he was speaking from experience. "Then what do you suggest?" Elijah was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We document everything. Every violation of the restraining order, every threat, every appearance. We build a case that's impossible to ignore. And in the meantime, we live our lives. We don't let him dictate how we feel or what we do." Claire nodded slowly. "That makes sense. But I still think we need to face him, at least once, to show him we're united." "If that's what you want," Elijah agreed, though he still looked uncertain. "But not alone. Not without backup." "The police?" Claire suggested. "For starters," Elijah said. "But I was thinking we might need something more personal." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like Sarah," Elijah said with a small smile. "And my grandmother, and anyone else who cares about us and wants to see us happy." Claire laughed, surprised by the suggestion. "A support team." "Exactly," Elijah nodded. "Mark is counting on isolation, on making you doubt me, doubt us. Let's show him that we're not alone, that we have people who know the truth and stand with us anyway." Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was the Elijah she knew and loved, thoughtful, strategic, focused on bringing people together rather than tearing them apart. "I like it," she decided. "Let's do it, starting with calling Sarah." As they finalized their plan over the next hour, Claire felt her spirits lifting. Yes, there were challenges ahead. Yes, there were wounds that would take time to heal, but they were facing them together, as a team, as partners. The past, both hers and Elijah's, had brought them to this moment. But it was the future they were building, step by step, day by day. A future that no one, not even Mark, could take from them unless they allowed it. Later that day, as they sat together on their couch making calls and sending messages to their support network, Claire looked over at Elijah and felt a surge of certainty. This was right. He was right. They were right together. Whatever came next, they would face it, side by side. The message that had found her that night, so many months ago, had led her to this man, this love, this life, and she wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Claire and Elijah put their plan into motion. They filed another police report about Mark's break-in, installed additional locks and a security camera at their door, and reached out to friends and family to create their support network. Sarah was the first to arrive, marching into their apartment with determination written across her face. "So this is the famous ex who can't take a hint," she said, after Claire had filled her in on everything that had happened. "What's the plan? Should we slash his tires? Put glitter in his air vents? I'm open to suggestions." Claire laughed despite the seriousness of the situation. "Nothing illegal, please. We're trying to build a case against him, not give him one against us." "Fine," Sarah sighed dramatically. "Legal options only. Boring. But I guess that's being adults." Elijah had been quiet during this exchange, watching Sarah with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Claire knew he was worried about how her best friend would react to the news of his past. "Elijah has something he wants to tell you," Claire said gently, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Something important." Sarah looked between them, her expression turning serious. "Okay, I'm listening." Elijah took a deep breath and told Sarah everything, about his engagement to Rebecca, about catching her with his friend, about the assault and his time in prison, about changing his name and starting over, about keeping it from Claire until Mark forced the truth into the open. When he finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying him intently. "So let me get this straight," she said finally. "You caught your fiancé cheating, lost your cool, paid the price, and then dedicated your life to helping others and becoming a better man." Elijah nodded cautiously. "That's the simplified version, yes." "Sounds like a redemption story to me," Sarah said with a shrug. "We've all done things we regret, Elijah. Maybe not prison-worthy things, but still. What matters is who you are now. And from what I've seen, you're pretty great for my best friend." The relief on Elijah's face was palpable. "Thank you," he said simply. "Don't thank me yet," Sarah warned. "I'm still going to give you hell if you ever hurt her. Past trauma or no past trauma?" "I would expect nothing less," Elijah replied with a smile. Claire felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Sarah's acceptance of Elijah, flaws and all, reaffirmed her own decision to stand by him, to believe in the man he had become, not the mistake he had made. Ruth Morgan arrived the next day, bringing with her a casserole, because no one thinks clearly on an empty stomach, and the quiet wisdom that had guided Elijah through his darkest days. "So, this ex-fiancé of yours is causing trouble," she said to Claire, after settling into the armchair by the window. "Using Elijah's past as a weapon." Claire nodded. "He broke into our apartment, tried to convince me that Elijah is dangerous, that he's hiding who he really is." Ruth's eyes flashed with anger. "My grandson made a mistake, a serious one, but he paid for it, and he spent every day since making amends in whatever way he can." "I know," Claire assured her, reaching over to take Elijah's hand. "I believe in who he is now." Ruth smiled, satisfaction evident in her expression. "Good. Then we're all on the same page. Now, what are we going to do about this Mark character?" They spent the afternoon refining their plan. Ruth suggested they meet Mark in a public place, somewhere with plenty of witnesses, but also priv AC for a conversation. Sarah volunteered to be nearby as backup, along with her boyfriend Mike, who happened to be a former college football player with an imposing presence. "We'll call Mark," Claire decided. "Tell him I've reconsidered, that I want to hear what he has to say, but on my terms, in public." Elijah still looked uncertain. "Are you sure about this? We could just let the police handle it." "The police can only do so much," Claire pointed out. "They can arrest him if he violates the restraining order again, but they can't make him understand that his tactics won't work, that I know everything about your past, and I still choose you." Elijah brought her hand to his lips. "I don't deserve you," he murmured. "Yes, you do," Claire corrected him firmly. "We deserve each other, the good and the bad, the past and the future, all of it." The plan was set for the following Saturday. Claire would meet RK at a cafe across town, one with outdoor seating where Sarah and Mike could keep watch from a nearby table. Elijah would join them partway through the conversation, once Claire had a chance to speak her piece. "Remember," Ruth said as they finalized the details, "the goal isn't to antagonize him. It's to make it clear once and for all that Claire has made her choice, that his manipulation and threats won't change that." Claire nodded, though a part of her worried that nothing they said or did would get through to Mark. His obsession seemed to be growing stronger, not weaker, with time. The night before the meeting, Claire lay awake in Elijah's arms, anxiety keeping her from sleep. "What if this doesn't work?" she whispered into the darkness. "What if it just makes him more determined?" Elijah tightened his arms around her. "Then we'll try something else, and something else after that. Whatever it takes to keep you safe, to keep us together." Claire pressed closer to him, drawing strength from his warmth, his steadiness. "I love you," she said. "No matter what happens tomorrow, remember that." "I love you too," Elijah replied, his voice a comfort in the dark. "Always." The cafe was busy when Claire arrived, just as they had hoped. She chose a table in the outdoor seating area, positioning herself so that Sarah and Mike, already seated at a table nearby, would see and hear everything. Mark arrived precisely on time, his appearance more put together than when he had broken into the apartment. He was clean-shaven, his hair neatly combed, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, as if this were a business meeting rather than a confrontation. "Claire," he said, his voice carefully controlled as he sat across from her. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Claire nodded, her own emotions firmly in check. "I think it's time we talked, really talked." Mark's expression brightened with hope. "I knew you'd come around, once you had time to think about what I told you, about who he really is." "I know exactly who Elijah is," Claire interrupted, her voice steady. "I know about his past. I know about the assault, the prison time, the name change, all of it." Mark looked taken aback. "He admitted it?" "Yes," Claire said simply. "Because unlike you, he respects me enough to tell me the truth when asked directly." Mark's face darkened. "So he confessed to being a violent criminal and you're still with him. What does that say about you, Claire?" "It says I believe in redemption," Claire replied. "In second chances, in the possibility that people can change, can learn from their mistakes and become better. Or maybe it says you're naive," Mark countered, "that you're so desperate not to be alone that you'll overlook anything, even violence." Claire felt a flash of anger, but kept her voice level. "You don't get to judge my choices, Mark, not anymore, not after what you did." "One mistake," Mark said dismissively. "One moment of weakness. At least I never put anyone in the hospital." "No, you just broke my heart," Claire shot back. "And then, when I found happiness with someone else, you stalked me, harassed me, broke into my home. Tell me, which one of you is showing violent tendencies now?" Mark had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I was worried about you. I still am." "No," Claire shook her head. "You were trying to control me, to force me back into your life because you couldn't stand the thought that I was happy without you." "That's not fair," Mark protested, but his eyes shifted away from hers. "Isn't it?" Claire pressed. "Look me in the eye and tell me you came here today because you genuinely care about my well-being, not because your ego can't handle rejection." Mark opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. For the first time since she'd known him, he seemed at a loss for words. "I loved you once," Claire continued, her voice softening slightly. "We built a life together, made plans together, but you destroyed that when you cheated. Not just because of the act itself, but because of what it revealed about who you really are. Someone who could betray me so completely and then expect me to just forgive and forget." "People make mistakes," Mark said quietly. "You just said you believe in second chances." "I do," Claire agreed. "But a second chance has to be earned, not demanded. And it requires genuine remorse, not manipulation and threats." Mark was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on the table between them. When he looked up, there was a rawness in his expression that Claire hadn't seen before. "I am sorry, Claire," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for hurting you, for everything that's happened since. I couldn't accept that it was really over." Claire felt a small measure of compassion stir within her. "I know, but it is over, Mark. It has been for a long time, and I need you to accept that, for both our sakes." Mark's jaw tightened. "Because of him? Because of this ex-con who swept in and took advantage of your vulnerability?" "No one took advantage of me," Claire said firmly. "Elijah and I connected as equals, through words, through shared experiences. What we have is real and honest in a way that you and I never were. As if on cue, Elijah approached the table. He had been waiting nearby as planned, giving Claire the space to say what she needed to say before joining them. "Hello, Mark," he said calmly, standing beside Claire's chair. Mark's expression hardened at the sight of him. "So the is was a setup, both of you ganging up on me?" "No," Claire corrected him. "This is us trying to end this cycle of harassment and fear. This is us showing you that your attempts to come between us have only made us stronger." Elijah pulled up a chair and sat beside Claire, not touching her but close enough that his presence was a comfort. "I understand why you're angry," he said to Mark, his voice level. "Why you're hurt. I've been where you are, betrayed, humiliated, desperate to make sense of it all." Mark looked surprised at this direct acknowledgement. "So it's true. You assaulted someone." "I did," Elijah admitted without hesitation. "I lost control. I hurt someone badly, and I paid for it, not just with prison time but with years of regret and self-recrimination. And yet here you are playing the reformed saint," Mark said bitterly. "Not a saint," Elijah shook his head. "Just a man trying to be better today than he was yesterday, a man who found something unexpected and beautiful with Claire, something worth protecting." "So what now?" Mark asked, looking between them. "You expect me to just walk away? To pretend none of this happened?" "We expect you to respect Claire's choice," Elijah replied. "To respect the restraining order, to focus on your own life instead of trying to destroy ours." Claire reached over and took Elijah's hand, a deliberate gesture that wasn't lost on Mark. "This is who I choose, Mark. This is the life I want. Please let us have it in peace." Mark stared at their joined hands for a long moment. Something seemed to crumble in his expression, the last of his denial, perhaps, or the final death of his hope. "You really love him?" he said, not a question but a realization. "I do," Claire confirmed gently, "with all my heart." Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the pavement. "I need to go." "Mark," Claire called as he turned to leave, "please tell me this is over. That you'll stop the calls, the stalking, all of it." He paused, his back to them. "I can't promise anything right now," he said over his shoulder. "I need time." Then he was gone, walking quickly away from the cafe without looking back. Claire watched him go, a mixture of relief and lingering concern washing over her. "Well, that went better than expected," Sarah said, appearing at their table the moment Mark was out of sight. "No shouting, no threats, no need for Mike to flex his muscles." "Do you think it worked?" Claire asked, looking up at her friend. "Will he leave us alone now?" Sarah shrugged. "Hard to say. He seemed pretty shaken, though. Maybe seeing you two together, seeing how solid you are, finally made it real for him." "I hope so," Elijah said, his arm slipping around Claire's shoulders. "Booty, just in case. We'll keep the security measures in place for a while." Claire leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "One day at a time," she murmured. "That's all we can do." The next few weeks passed without incident. No sign of Mark, no strange calls, no unexpected visits. Claire and Elijah settled into their new home and their new normal, gradually rebuilding the trust that had been shaken by the revelations about Elijah's past. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when Claire would wake from a nightmare about Mark breaking in again, or days when a small doubt would creep into her mind about what else Elijah might be keeping from her. But they talked through these moments, held each other through the difficult nights, and emerged stronger for having faced these challenges together. 1 month after the confrontation with Mark, Claire was working at her studio when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Claire Whitman?" a woman's voice asked when she answered. "Yes, who's calling?" Claire replied, immediately on guard. "My name is Rebecca Winters," the woman said. "You don't know me, but I used to be engaged to Elijah Carter, who I believe is now Elijah Morgan." Claire felt her blood run cold. "How did you get my number?" "From Mark Daniels," Rebecca admitted. "He contacted me a few weeks ago, told me about you and Elijah, asked me to warn you about him." Claire's grip tightened on her phone. "And are you warning me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Actually, no. That's not why I'm calling." Claire waited, her heart pounding. "Then why are you calling?" "To apologize," Rebecca said, her voice softening. "To Elijah, through you, if you're willing to pass it on. Mark told me what happened between you two, and it brought back a lot of memories, made me think about things I've tried to forget for years." Claire sank into her desk chair. "What kind of things?" "The truth," Rebecca replied simply. "The truth about what really happened back then, about why Elijah went to prison." Claire's grip on her phone tightened. "I know what happened. Elijah told me everything." "Did he?" Rebecca asked. "Did he tell you he took the fall for me?" A cold sensation spread through Claire's chest. "What do you mean?" Rebecca sighed heavily. "It wasn't Elijah who beat up Tom. The man I was seeing behind his back, it was me. I lost control when Tom threatened to tell Elijah about us unless I gave him money. I hit him with a lamp, and things just escalated." Claire struggled to process this revelation. "But Elijah went to prison. He confessed." "To protect me," Rebecca confirmed. "By the time the police arrived, I was hysterical. Elijah had come home and found us. Tom bleeding on the floor, me covered in his blood. He told me to wash up, change my clothes, then he told the police he'd done it." Claire closed her eyes, overwhelmed by this new information. It made a strange sort of sense. Elijah's reluctance to discuss the details of that night, his focus on the aftermath rather than the act itself. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked finally. "Because Mark Daniels expected me to paint Elijah as a monster," Rebecca replied, "and I couldn't do it. Not when he's the most selfless man I've ever known. Not when he sacrificed years of his life to protect someone who had betrayed him in the worst possible way." Claire was quiet, for a moment, absorbing this new reality. "Does Elijah know you're calling me?" "No," Rebecca said. "We haven't spoken since before his sentencing. I tried to visit him in prison to tell him I would confess, but he refused to see me. By the time he got out, I had moved away, started a new life, just like he did." "I need to talk to him about this," Claire said, more to herself than to Rebecca. "I understand," Rebecca replied, "but please tell him I'm so sorry for everything. And tell him I finally found the courage he always had." After promising to pass on the message, Claire ended the call and sat in stunned silence. Her mind raced with questions, with a new understanding of the man she loved. Not just a man who had made a mistake and paid for it, but a man who had sacrificed himself to protect someone who had hurt him deeply. She drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets and buildings. When she entered their apartment, she found Elijah in the kitchen, preparing dinner, a domesticity that now seemed both precious and fragile. "Hey, you're home early," he said with a smile that faded when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" Claire set her purse down slowly. "Rebecca called me today." Elijah went very still, the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables hovering above the cutting board. "Rebecca, how did she even know about you?" "Mark found her," Claire explained, moving closer to him. "He asked her to warn me about you, but that's not why she called." Elijah set the knife down carefully, his eyes never leaving Claire's face. "Why did she call then?" "To tell me the truth," Claire said softly, "about what really happened that night." Elijah's face drained of color. He turned away, bracing his hands on the edge of the counter. "She shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" Claire asked, coming to stand beside him. "Why shouldn't I know that you went to prison for something you didn't do?" "Because it doesn't matter," Elijah said, his voice tight with emotion. "It was a long time ago. Another life." Claire gently turned him to face her. "It matters to me. It matters that the man I love would sacrifice years of his life to protect someone who betrayed him. That speaks to who you are, Elijah. Who you've always been." Elijah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know. It wasn't about being noble or self-sacrificing. I couldn't bear to see her destroyed too. One life ruined seemed better than two." Claire reached up to cup his face in her hands. "That's exactly what makes it so incredible, Elijah. Even in your darkest moment, you were thinking of someone else." "I was younger then," Elijah said with a sad smile. "Less selfish, maybe." "No," Claire shook her head. "You're still that person. The one who puts others first. The one who sees the best in people, even when they've hurt you. It's who you are. Elijah pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. "What did Rebecca want?" he asked after a long moment. "To apologize," Claire told him, her face pressed against his chest. "To tell you she's sorry for everything, and that she finally found the courage you always had." Elijah was quiet for a long time, his chin resting on the top of Claire's head. "I forgave her a long time ago," he said finally. "In prison I had a lot of time to think, to realize that anger and resentment would only destroy whatever was left of me. Forgiveness was the only way forward." Claire pulled back to look up at him, her heart full of love and admiration. "You're an amazing man, Elijah Morgan, and I'm so grateful that Wrong Number found you." Elijah's smile was tender as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. It wasn't wrong at all. It was exactly right. Over the next few months, life settled into a new rhythm. Claire and Elijah continued to build their home and their future together, stronger for having weathered the storms that had threatened to tear them apart. There was no further contact from Mark, whether Rebecca's call had made him realize the futility of his efforts, or whether seeing Claire and Elijah together had finally convinced him to move on. They couldn't say. But slowly, the shadow of his presence faded from their lives. Elijah's grandmother became a frequent visitor to their apartment, bringing food and wisdom in equal measure. Sarah and Mike joined them for dinner at least once a week, the four of them forming a tight-knit group that felt like family. On a crisp autumn evening, almost a year after Claire's mistaken message had found its way to Elijah, they walked hand in hand through the park where they had shared their first kiss. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you hadn't typed that wrong number?" Elijah asked, as they sat on their favorite bench by the pond. Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes. It's strange to think that one small mistake changed everything." "Not a mistake," Elijah corrected H.R. gently. "A miracle." Claire smiled, watching the last rays of sunlight glitter on the water. "I like that better." Elijah shifted slightly, turning to face her. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. "Elijah, I know we haven't talked about this," he said quickly. "And if it's too soon, I understand, but I wanted you to have this, to know how I feel, Lisa. Then if we wait." He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring, a single diamond set in a band of intertwined gold and silver. "The two metals represent our past and future," he explained, "separate but woven together to create something beautiful." Claire felt tears spring to her eyes. "It's perfect." "Claire Whitman," Elijah said softly, taking her hand in his. "You found me when I wasn't looking to be found. You saw me, really saw me, through nothing but words on a screen. You loved me even when you learned the worst parts of my story. And I want to spend the rest of my life writing a new story with you." He slipped from the bench to one knee, still holding her hand. "Will you marry me?" Claire didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." Elijah slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and promise of their future together. Later that evening, as they celebrated with champagne in their apartment, Claire's phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it, then smiled. "What is it?" Elijah asked, noticing her expression. Claire held up her phone so he could see the message from Sarah. "I expect to be maid of honor this time. No negotiation." "She saw your post," Elijah laughed, referring to the photo Claire had shared on social media, her hand with the new ring prominently displayed. "She did," Claire confirmed, setting her phone aside to curl up next to Elijah on the couch. "Speaking of the wedding, I was thinking—" "Already?" Elijah teased. "We've been engaged for all of 3 hours." Claire smiled up at him. "I was thinking we should write our own vows. Real ones, not the standard promises. Words that tell our story." Elijah's expression softened. "I'd like that. After all, words are what brought us together." "Words and one wrong number," Claire added, lifting her glass in a toast. "To mistakes that turn out to be miracles." To messages that find us when we need them most, Elijah countered, clinking his glass against hers. As they sat together in the home they had built, surrounded by the life they had created, Claire knew with absolute certainty that this was where she was meant to be, with this man, in this moment, and for all the moments to me. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been pain and doubt, secrets and revelations, moments when it would have been simpler to walk away. But the best stories, the ones worth telling and retelling, were never the easiest ones. They were the ones that began with an unexpected message and ended with a love strong enough to weather any storm, the ones where broken hearts found healing in the most unlikely places, the ones where past mistakes led to future. 3 miracles. In the end, Claire realized it wasn't about finding the perfect person. It was about finding the person who saw your imperfections and loved you anyway, who chose you day after day, message after message, through the best and worst moments of your story. And in Elijah, she had found exactly that. Not a perfect man, but the perfect one for her. A man with a quiet soul and a poet's heart, who had seen her pain and reached across the distance to offer healing. A man whose message had found her when she needed it most. 6 months later, Claire stood in a small room at the back of a charming countryside chapel, her white dress flowing around her like a dream. Sarah fussed with the veil, making last-minute adjustments, while Claire's mother dabbed at tears that threatened to ruin her makeup. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," her mother said, squeezing her hand. "I've never seen you so radiant." Claire smiled, her heart too full for words. After everything she and Elijah had been through to reach this day, it felt like a miracle that they were here, surrounded by friends and family, ready to begin the next chapter of their story. "It's time," Sarah announced, glancing at her watch. "Ready?" Claire took a deep breath and nodded. More than ready. The small chapel was filled with loved ones, Elijah's grandmother in the front row, beaming with pride. Claire's parents, holding hands like newlyweds themselves. Sarah's boyfriend Mike, who had become such an important part of their circle, colleagues, and friends who had supported them through the ups and downs of the past year. And at the end of the aisle stood Elijah, handsome in his dark suit, his eyes fixed on Claire as she began her walk toward him. In his hands, he held a small leather-bound notebook, the same one he had given her months ago, filled with poems inspired by their love. When she reached him, he opened the notebook to a marked page and read the words he had written for this moment. "Claire, before you, I was words without meaning, a story without purpose. You found me in the darkness and brought light to every page of my life. Today I promise to love you with the same courage and faith you showed when you opened your heart to a stranger. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your Safi harbor, to write each day of our future with honesty, passion, and joy. This is not the end of our story, but the beginning of our greatest chapter." Tears slipped down Claire's cheeks as she took the notebook from him and read her own vows. "Elijah, sometimes the most important messages in life find us when we least expect them. Your words found me at my lowest point and lifted me higher than I thought possible. Today I promise to be your reader and your muse, your critic and your biggest fan. To love the man you were, the man you are, and the man you will become. To build a life of words and actions that speak of nothing but love. Our story began with a message sent to the wrong number, but delivered to exactly the right heart." As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, Claire felt the journey come full circle. From heartbreak to healing, from strangers to soulmates, from a mistaken mess, sage to a marriage built on truth and trust. And she knew, with the certainty that comes from finding your way home after a long journey, that this was just the beginning of their story. That the best words, the most beautiful chapters, were still waiting to be written, together.